like everything gets fast forwarded right up to Christmas break. So really appreciate everybody taking the time to to gather together to talk about the literacy within our state. And just for the record, I'm calling this together for an informational meeting. Due to some difficulties with scheduling, we currently lack a quorum. But out of respect for all of our presenters and the important work that we are doing and the information that you have to share, I still want us to go forward and allow everyone to present, and that puts it on the record of what we're presenting, as well as allowing board members to go back and look at it as well. Um, so I want us to continue even though we lack. So I will not call a roll. We will just go ahead and begin. And then if our other board members can join in, I will call a roll officially if we can get a quorum. But I also don't want to waste all of our presenters' time by waiting on them. And so we're going to go ahead and get started. Um, if there's any questions about that, please let me know. If not, I'll go ahead and kick off the agenda. All right, so just looking at what we're doing today, we have Elizabethton City Schools. One of the things that we have really wanted to continue to do throughout on this literacy committee is talk about best practice, like what's working, who's doing it well, and how can we learn from those people doing it so well. We had Clarksville, Montgomery here a little while ago, and it is great to have Elizabethton City Schools. We have Dr. Myra Newman and Dr. Rachel Darnell here to join us to share with us what is going on in Elizabeth City Schools. So I would love to begin by welcoming um, Dr. Newman and Dr. Darnell with us to share what is going on in Elizabethton City. And we're so excited and glad to have, that's a lot to say, by the way, Elizabethton. I want to say Elizabethtown, Elizabethton City. Glad to have you guys here. And I know you all are busy, so I'm going to turn it over to you and let us know about the great work you all are doing.
We are excited about our work that we're doing here, and we have started with our literacy journey several years ago, just going through the IPG tool and training our teachers up and our administrators on how to do that work. But after the pandemic, we saw a need to move forward and to adjust some more. So we'd like to share that journey with you and the opportunities that we saw that we could help close our learning gaps with our students.
That sounds
So
wonderful. Thank you so much.
you're welcome. It's a team effort. It's not just one person. It takes all of us working as a team, our supervisors, our principals, and our coaches, and even our teachers. But we have to set the plan together before we get it to our teachers. So it takes a team to make something happen and to make positive changes. And so that's what we have worked diligently on, is setting that team together so that our work will move forward. Looking at our 2001 data, we knew our ELA took a hit, and we wanted to make some changes or put some opportunities in place so that we could make some changes in our students' lives. So they lost some opportunities during the pandemic, and we wanted to close those gaps and also see if we could help to accelerate their learning as we go. So we looked at the opportunities that the state had offered for us, and if you'll go on to the next slide. We chose to focus in on these three opportunities, and Reading 360, the 10 all course tutoring, and then also our summer learning camps. And those are the three things that we focused our time and efforts on as a team to help our students to excel in literacy. Reading 360, we felt it was very important for all of our teachers, pre-K through 5, even our special area teachers, our librarians, our administrators, to receive the training. So they all have received the training in 2021, the summer right before we started back to school. I think it was like the week before we started back to school. So it was like training, and then how can we implement it? So we wanted to get those best practices in there in our classrooms, but we had to take it a little bit slow. So we took the first year in 21 to slowly implement and move that change in our system. We reached out to Dr. Coons and asked about the ESSER planning grant. And we know it was for a third party, but we wanted to have someone in our system who would help us to implement these strategies and opportunities. And so we were given the opportunity to hire Dr. Darnell to help us with implementation in our schools and help us to make sure that we were consistent across our district. So that was a great opportunity. Her focus was on Reading 360 and 10 core tutoring. Dr. Darnell is going to do the next part here. Go ahead.
So one of the very first things that we did when I came on board out of the schools and into this implementation coach role was to create a literacy vision. And we sat down with several different instructional leaders, supervisors, principals, coaches. I think you'll see that theme throughout this journey, this team approach to what we've done. And when we sat down to talk about our vision, our goal was to create a cohesive, a vision for a cohesive ELA program that intentionally develops students as readers, writers, and communicators in every single grade level and in every single course of study that they engage in from the time they enter Elizabethton City Schools to the time that they graduate. On the next slide, you can see the four components of that vision. These are the four things that we were committed to providing our students, and the four areas where, as leaders, we were committed to supporting our teachers in developing the resources, in implementing best practice, and in helping them monitor student growth and achievement. So after we had set the vision and had started working with our teachers, we started the hard work, the heavy lift of implementing a new program mid-year. That was definitely an adventure, but we decided as a team we would not require full implementation until the 2022-2023 school year. That was due to materials not being here, teachers being nervous about implementing something new, and us just not knowing how students or teachers would receive and react to the new materials. What we were committed to doing was a piece-by-piece implementation during the 2021-22 school year. So we started with that Sounds First piece, that 10-minute phonological awareness piece. And when I say that magic started to happen in classrooms, I'm not exaggerating by any means. One of my favorite parts of my job is going to visit the pre-K through second grade classrooms and seeing these teachers excited about what they're teaching, and these kids just being so engaged and being able to talk about the syllables. And I was in pre-K a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking about syllables and explaining how many syllables were in their name and how they knew that that was a syllable. So we started there. And when you have something that magical happening with just 10 minutes a day, as a teacher, you start to think, well, what's going to happen if I do more? What's going to happen if an hour of my day is based in this type of instruction? So even though teachers were not required to fully implement, we told them as coaches, we are willing to walk alongside of you. If you want to fully implement and you want to run with it, we will run right alongside of you. If you are not quite ready to run, you want to walk, we'll walk with you. So we had, by the end of the school year, all of our teachers were fully implementing, which was shocking to say the least, since it was an optional full implementation year. But one of the things that we did was provide a lot of support. One way we did that was by combining our benchmark advanced, our adopted curriculum, with that strong foundational skills component from the State Department. We ended up purchasing the CKLA just for the ease of use of materials, but it is that Tennessee Foundational Skills Curriculum Supplement, making sure that every student is getting what they need and teachers aren't having to piecemeal an ELA block together. Other things that we did included creating slide decks So that way teachers weren't spending their time and energy on that, and they could really focus on internalizing the content of the lesson. We got to model lessons. We got to help with lesson prep. We're still doing a lot of these things. Anytime a teacher wants me to come model a lesson, I'm happy to jump in there and see the little light bulbs going off. It truly has been a very magical experience from my point of view.
One of the neat things that we saw was that we did not see this as a top down, and I don't think our teachers saw this as a top down. You have to do this, but our teachers were so excited about implementing the Sounds First and the curriculum supplement that they sold it to each other. If someone was reluctant, another teacher was like, "Hey, you've got to try this." So it was very beneficial that it was more peer initiated than it was top down initiated. And we saw so much excitement in our schools, and even our parents noticed a big difference in what our students were learning and coming home and being able to talk about and to read and to sound out. And so that was very encouraging for us.
That's great. That's great. So, how did, just in curiosity, I mean, I love this idea of creating a literacy vision, foundational skills, complex text, writing, building knowledge. How did you guys, like, what were the teams that put that, like, what was the process of putting that together?
Rachel and I worked closely together, and she worked as well with our two instructional coaches that are housed in the school buildings, and we worked to build those together as she talked about the slide decks. And so that really helped frame up that work for our teachers so they could use the slide deck and to really focus on internalizing the lesson and being able to present it to the students and not being dependent on the slide deck, but also just being able to make sure they had all of the pieces there that they needed to support the learning in the classroom. Rachel, would you like to talk more about that?
And as far as our vision creation, it really was a team effort. We coaches kind of came up with the first draft just so we would have something to work off of. Using input from teachers and from other literacy walkthroughs that we had done, where we saw what was best practice, what was really making an impact on the qualitative and quantitative data that we gather. And we took that to principals to help them refine it because they are the curriculum leaders in their building. I know that our principals have done a really fantastic job building trust with their teachers. So if they set the vision, the teachers will follow. So we wanted them to have their say and have their buy-in. So they made sure that it was aligned to what they saw as best practice as well.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
The next slide talks about some of the benefits that we saw with implementing Reading 360. We've already talked about the top down. The teachers didn't see that. They took ownership in their implementation, which I think is very important, is if they take ownership in their work and they see it as their work and how they're helping their students. It's very important. And then the most important part is that we saw student improvement in reading. There's nothing more than that. And it's great when you can hear a teacher explaining or hollering at their principals down the hall saying, "You've got to come and hear this student read. He's reading." So that's so exciting. Not only did we see it with just our students that we didn't have at-risk issues with, but students that we may have thought had maybe special education later on. We saw growth in those students, those at-risk students, and that's such a positive, and they were getting that in tier 1 and not in intervention. And I think that's something that we need to continue to work on and improve.
That's great.
So here's just a snapshot of our improvement from 2019, that's pre-pandemic, and to 2022. And you can see the huge jump in our reading outcomes. This is from our universal screener in the spring in that school year. So that's 2018-2019 school year and 21-22 school year. So you can see the improvement that our students are making just with the implementation of 360. we're excited about that. Our teachers are excited about that. Now we have work to do in our third grade. Students are coming to them reading. Now we need to change our instruction in third grade to make sure that that momentum keeps going.
I mean, you get 4x on your kindergarten scores. Like you want to, like that's amazing.
Yes,
Wow.
we're excited about that.
So how do you just out of curiosity? 'Cause I know like second goes to third, third goes to fourth, fourth goes. I mean they keep going. So what are y'all going to sort of like try to replicate this process for then your next group of teachers? Like what when you're handing those students who are now performing at 85% second graders, are how are you going to do that? I'm just fascinated, like continuing that up the pipe to third and fourth.
We are working with our third grade ELA teachers right now,
Okay.
and just really looking at our instruction and our benchmark assessments that we do 3 times a year to make sure that we are really hitting the standards that we need to be hitting, and answering the questions or asking the questions the way they need to be asked so that students will know how to respond to those questions. It's going to be a hard task because this is measuring how they're learning to read. And in third grade, it's more about learning to read. And so we're still working on closing those gaps, but it has to take it to another step. So we're not doing as much as the foundational piece in third grade and fourth grade and fifth grade as we were in K2. So we have to change our instruction in 3, 4, and 5 to meet these students where they're at. They're coming to them more prepared than they ever were. Rachel, would you like to address that as well?
One thing we're really excited about, we're working with 3 other districts in our region with focusing on 3, 4, and 5 to help create those slide decks, glean best practice from one another. And so having that sort of learning community has been really beneficial as we're rolling things out. Because we are a small district, a lot of times our third grade ELA teacher is the only third grade ELA teacher in that school. And that's the way it is for many of our districts around here. So just furthering that reach where they can have someone to reach out to for support, and knowing that they have the materials like slide decks and I can statements, that they're not spending we're not going to spend our time creating things, but spend our time internalizing what we want to teach. That's what we want our teachers to spend their time doing.
That's great.
The next opportunity we had was Tennessee All Core, and we're so excited about this opportunity. Sometimes this group of students are the ones that are left out, or we struggle to meet their needs or to help them to excel. So this was our opportunity to do that. So the director of schools, which is on here, Mr. Van Ness, and I sat down and said, okay, how can we make this happen? And in a session with Dr. Coons, she mentioned that, hey, this can be done in school during the school day. And that changed our whole perspective and how we can move forward. So we're excited about doing this during the school day. We knew we had access to our students then, and it just gave us an opportunity to hit a different group of students that may not have been available to us before. So we drafted a short vision around the 10 All Core, and then we also developed an implementation plan. So here's our vision, and it's just that we're going to provide high dosage, low ratio, standards-based ELA tutoring. Our focus is on ELA for 10 All Core. We wanted to do it all year long because that's an area that we saw our students needed support in. And then we're going to do it during the school day when we have the students, and focus on first grade through 8th grade and those students that are not identified as proficient. So they're currently scoring below or approaching on TCAP. And then they're not receiving any other type of interventions such as RTI, Tier 2 or Tier 3, or special education. And our goal is to accelerate learning, not to remediate. So here's our implementation plan. Mr. Van Huss and I sat down and looked at what number of students that we could serve through 10 All Core. And we came up with these numbers, and then we decided, okay, now that we have the number of students that we might be able to serve through 10 all core, now how many people do we need? What kind of staff do we need? So we looked at hiring a lead 10 all core teacher. This is a certified teacher for each of our elementary schools and our middle school, and then 2 assistants at each of the elementary school and 4 assistants at our middle school. And they would provide that high dosage, low ratio tutoring to our students during the school day. So we identified our students. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Came up with a plan on how to identify those students, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. And then create a tutoring schedule. So it was really easy for us to do that during our elementary because we had an intervention schedule already in place. We just kind of pushed that into the intervention schedule. And the middle school was a little bit more difficult. They didn't have an intervention schedule per se, but they did have a special area, and we were able to push that into that. So, Rachel, is this your slide, Rachel?
I think it is.
Okay.
I'll take it even if it's not.
There we go.
So one of the first things we had to do was train our tutors. All of our tutors attended that Reading 360 training. And so for our assistants, our full-time assistants, they received some modified training through the TN All Core training that you can do virtually. I have also been working with them and with our instructional coaches on doing some training as needed. We worked to identify students who would benefit the most from this high dosage, low ratio tutoring. These were students typically who did not score proficient on the ELA portion of TCAP, or students who scored on the low end of proficiency and who were in danger of dropping out of that proficient category. We also made sure that these students did not qualify for RTI intervention or SPED intervention. And in grades 1 and 2, since we don't have that TCAP data on them, we had to use the universal screener. So students who fell between the 26th and 70th percentile for first and second grade. The really neat thing about this, about these students and things that I've heard from parents at all levels, is that these are typically students who don't get pulled for small group. They're kind of our right in the middle students, and they were all of a sudden getting this one-on-one support. So we were able to really meet them where they were and made sure that they were not falling through any cracks. We supported implementation through myself and through our school-based instructional coaches. Our principals also played a huge hand in making sure that we were consistent in our vision and implementing our vision at all of our schools. Our principals also made sure that our lead TN All Core teachers had planning time with our grade level teachers. That way they know what the teachers are teaching. They're familiar. These teachers are familiar with their students, and they can have a great conversation about how can we make the best use of our tutoring time. Our biggest struggle with implementation has been finding ELA materials. I have heard that from other districts as well, so that makes me feel a little better that we're all looking for the best thing out there. One of the ways that we've kind of close this gap is through our adopted ELA curricula. We have used different intervention pieces that are available through that. We have used units that teachers don't get to during the school year because of they typically give us more material than we could ever hope to get through in 180 days. We've also used other things like News ELA, ReadsWorks, etc. And those have been pulled into binders that match the units of each grade level. So that way, if third grade, for example, is in Unit 4, the TN All Core people can go to their third grade Unit 4 binder and find things that are aligned thematically and by standards. So again, the students are just getting another dose of what they're getting in the classroom.
So the benefits that we have seen from 10 Core is that we've been able to serve 266 students who may not have been able to been served before. And I think that since we're able to do it during the school day, that's a higher number than what we could possibly ever serve before or after school. So we're excited to serve those the high ratio of students in our schools, and they're getting tutoring 2 days a week for 30 to 45 minutes. And they have someone in the building that they can build strong relationships with. So it's neat to be in a school and a student would come by and see their tutor because they have that strong relationship because they're in that low ratio tutoring twice a week. So they are receiving weekly tutoring around their grade level ELA standards, and it's aligned to what is happening in their Tier 1 instruction, which is helps to accelerate their learning. And we're working to close those ELA gaps that happened during the pandemic. So here's just a little bit, the next slide shows a little bit of our data from our 10 Core students. So that first one are students that move from not proficient to proficient. We had 38% of our students to move. And then we had 41% of our students to move up from up a proficient level. So they may have been in level 1, but they ended up in level 2, which they moved up, but they did not move up to proficient. And then we had 61% of our students that made growth that we saw when we looked at their TLOS scores. We saw that they made growth on their TCAP assessments. Our next opportunity was the summer learning camps, and we were excited to serve our grades 1 through 5 at our summer learning camp, and then 5th through 8th grade at our summer bridge camp. And we received a waiver for 4 weeks and for 4 days a week, and we were excited to do that. It helped us to hire our most effective teachers, and we worked really hard those 4 weeks and had lots of fun. You can see we served in 2021, we had more students interested in our summer learning camps than we did in 22. And I think that's just because opportunities for travel were open for our parents. And so our number reduced. But that's okay. We still served the ones that came, and I enjoyed that greatly. Right, to the next slide. We utilized our data, our universal screener, which we use Ames Web, and then our previous TCAP scores, and our cyclone checkpoints, which we use Mastery Connect case as our benchmarking tool. And we look at that data to identify our students for our summer learning camps. And we do an hour of ELA, an hour of math, an hour of intervention, an hour of physical education and lunch, and then in our learning camp, we do an hour stream, and that stream hour is amazing. We have a phenomenal person who helps develop our curriculum for that, and that stream hour keeps our children coming back every day.
So we did use high quality instructional materials as our curriculum for the summer learning camps. At the elementary learning camp, we used a combination of 3 different things. First was the last unit of Benchmark Advanced, our knowledge building curriculum. Typically our teachers don't get to unit 10, so we use that there. We use the TNFSCS Sounds First piece, and we use the assessment and remediation guide from Amplify to really support students and meet them where they were with their foundational skills development. Our bridge camp, we use that last unit of their Amplify ELA material. Again, our middle school, we just don't get to that last unit. And then for our RTI piece, we use the Sunday system, something that we already had in place.
Some benefits that we've seen from our learning camps, it has extended our students' learning for an additional month. It's less time for the summer slide to occur. Strong relationships are being built with our teachers across our district and also with our students and our adults in our system. And then it's accelerating grade level standards instead of remediation. So we're helping them prepare for the next grade level. And then, like I said, relationships across our districts. We have our teachers coming together across our districts, and they're working together, and it's helping to build that relationships and friendships and working collaborations among our teachers, so that extends into the year, the next year, the next school year. Here are some of our reading outcomes after these initiatives have been in place. So you can see our 2019, that's pre-pandemic, and then our dip in 2021, and then where we're at in 2022. So we had seen tremendous growth from 2021. And then in 4 out of the 6 grade levels, we saw growth from pre-pandemic. So which we're very excited about. We're moving in the right direction, and we need to continue these initiatives and keep working hard. And our teachers are excited about seeing these outcomes as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then looking forward, some things that we want to do is just continue our support of the efforts in literacy, and then make any adjustments we need to for the 10 all core and the learning camps to support students that might be affected by the Tennessee Learning Loss Remediation and Student Acceleration Act. And then we're also partnering with NICEWANGER on the Project On Track for the high dosage, low ratio math tutoring in grades 1 through 8. And then I didn't put this in there, but Mr. Van Hess wanted me to make sure I mention this. We're using some of our funds from our Best for All grant to duplicate the high dosage, low ratio tutoring at our high school in our Algebra 1. We really need support in our high school, and that's where we're placing some of our funds there. That's our presentation.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We I do want to just say thank you. This is really, really, really neat. To listen to the amount of work and then to see the progress. I mean, I just keep thinking back 2 years ago, right, where everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, how are we going to do? What are the ripples going to be? The ripples we're going to be seeing for a decade." And to see school districts that are coming together and being willing to step in and see those really paying those levels, not just go back to where they were, but start to exceed the pre-pandemic levels, is really, really neat. And I do also, just real quick, and I want to open up for anybody, comments, questions by everyone. But before I do that, we do have about 10 minutes into your all's presentation for us. Mr. Cobbins and Mr. Wells were able to join in, but I didn't want to interrupt you. And so I do want to take a quick roll call, just because we do now have a quorum, and we've had it for most of your presentation. So just want to recognize Warren Wells and call the roll. Warren, you on here?
Here. Yep. Thank you.
All right. And Mr. Cobbins?
Yes, sir. Here.
All right, great. Welcome to you guys. Again, they jumped on about 5-10 minutes into you all talking, but I wanted to let you all keep going. So questions, feedback, thoughts from anybody who was listening to this amazing presentation. I have some I'll share, but I'll wait till the end.
This is Daryl. I would just applaud you for your efforts. It looks like you've put in a lot of comprehensive work across the board to get those increases in proficiency that you did, and the progress at the varying levels. So thank you for your hard work, and appreciate you sharing this with us.
Thank you.
Yep, my comments are kind of long. Where Nate was going with just where we were before or during the pandemic, and how worried everyone was, and just thank y'all for everything you're doing in this area and focusing on it.
I do want to give a shout out to this district. I know you heard from Dr. Darnell and Dr. Newman, but we've had the opportunity to visit, and you can talk to their principals, you can talk to their instructional coaches, you can talk to their teachers, you can talk to their teaching assistants, and everyone is focused on the literacy work and the work on ensuring children are on grade level. And it's just really powerful. So I will give them a shout out and encourage you to go visit Elizabethton, because they are doing some amazing work, and you can talk to all the stakeholders and hear everyone so focused. And want to give a shout out to Director Van Huss, because I know he is on the call, but creating this focused, coherent initiative around students. It's just really impressive for the department to be able to hear the work and to see the work in person. Just really proud of their efforts as a district.
And that, honestly, Dr. Cruz, that's kind of what I was going to say. Just from charting a vision to following through with it for as many constituencies as you're trying to work with. I think just ultimately comes down to a reflection of leadership within the district and the willingness to bring people together to utilize the resources available, and then to be committed to progress. But I think just I go back to them. I mean, we've talked about literacy pre-pandemic, right? How many people have sat down and said, let's articulate a vision for literacy that is going to chart a path. And sometimes we overlook the very obvious things. Without vision, the people perish, right? And so just want to commend the leadership of Elizabethton City Schools at every level, because it takes leadership at every level, from the classroom to the superintendent's office and everywhere in between, to do something that's comprehensive and to do it together. And I love the sentiment of you all, that you almost feel like you're just getting started, right? Like you're just getting into it. And that's exciting too, to think about, like, where do you go from here? So anyway, thank you all so much, and congratulations to Elizabethton City Schools. Thank you, Dr. Newman and Dr. Darnell, for joining us and presenting with us. Phenomenal work. And I just really appreciate you taking your time to do that.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. All right, next up, and we are going to shift over to summer camp outcomes, and want to introduce Megan McElroy to come. I believe that's is that who's reporting here? Yeah, there she is. Okay. Talk
Thanks,
about summer
Kate.
camp.
Yeah, I think I'm Megan McElroy, Chief of Statewide Supports at the department. I think this will actually be a nice segue from hearing the district, one district in Elizabethton, talk about their experience with summer camps, to kind of zoom out and look at our impact as a state this past summer. So happy to be here to talk through this with you. Summer camps for us are really an agency-wide effort. So Lisa Coons on our call in academics oversees the programming and our district grants. The assessment team supports our pre and post tests. Our IT team supports attendance tracking. My team in core supports implementation and observation to capture needs and bright spots. So I may have some of my colleagues who've joined chime in at various points throughout as well, since this really is a team effort. But want to start with just our strategic priorities that y'all are familiar with. Our summer camps, as you know, are a critical part of our academic strategy, both in terms of learning acceleration emerging from the pandemic, but also, I think, important to note, part of our longer term strategy as well, to ensure that students have the additional supports that they need to progress on grade level. I think you all are familiar with the special session law that requires our LEAs to offer summer learning camps. This past summer, summer of 22, was the second year of camps hosted by districts in accordance with this law. As a part of the law, we at the department are required to report annually by November 1st to the General Assembly on a few specific aspects of summer camps, and that report is what I'll be sharing with you all today. Most of what's required for reporting is both enrollment and attendance data, so we will talk through that. Our pre and post test growth results in ELA and math from the beginning of camps to the end of camps, and the extent to which districts are able to staff their summer camps. So those are the three areas, just to preview, that we will focus on in this presentation today. Oops. Hold on, I think I went too far. Allie, help me figure out how to, I can't find my controls. There we go. Thank you. I don't see I can click on the screen and it moves forward, but not backwards. So I may need your help if I click too many times again, but thank you. In terms of some of the top level findings from summer of 2022, and then we'll dig into each piece more specifically, but generally we saw what I would consider strong attendance rates for a summer program, with students on average attending about 79% of the time. So that is just a straight number of days of camp and number of days that students attended turned into a percentage. We also saw statewide growth from pre to post test for students in both ELA and math. This is the second year in a row that we've seen that statewide growth over the course of summer camps. And the vast majority of districts were able to adequately staff their camps. And we'll talk a bit more about what that means as we dig deeper into that data set. But overall, I think the highlights here reflect another successful summer of our learning camps. Okay, so we'll start with enrollment and attendance data. As you can see here, the breakdown between our summer learning and stream camps and our learning loss bridge camps. Just by way of reminder here of which grades each of those camps serve. For this past summer, our summer learning and stream camps were provided to rising 1st through 5th graders. And the learning loss bridge camps, again, for this past summer, were provided for rising 6th through 8th graders. So essentially an elementary for the most part and a middle school breakdown on those camps. You can see enrollment in the top in blue and then attendance in orange at the bottom. I think of note here, we didn't see significant differences in attendance between our ED and our non-ED students across both camps, which is encouraging. We did see slightly lower attendance rates, though not significant, in the learning loss bridge camps. So those middle school grades, which is not unusual based on some of the anecdotes we heard from our districts across the state. Just to put some of this data in context, it's worth noting kind of what our expected enrollment rates were based on what we funded and how this enrollment data compares to that. So in terms of the summer learning camps for those elementary students, we actually hit about 85% enrollment towards what we expected to have. So I would say our elementary camps were pretty well enrolled and fairly close to what our expectation was for those camps. I would say closer to target with our ED students than with our non-ED students. So we're seeing we're meeting the expectation in terms of enrolling ED students, economically disadvantaged, which is great, slightly lower than expected with our non-economically disadvantaged students. So that's for the summer camps, those elementary grades. And then in terms of the learning loss bridge camps for middle school, we were quite a bit more under enrolled in these grades compared to our projections. We were about 36% enrolled towards where we expected to be for those learning loss bridge camps. This, as I said, kind of tracks with what we've heard from districts anecdotally as they plan for and enroll in camps, that it's harder to get that 6th through 8th grade level students to participate, which makes sense. They tend to have more going on in the summer in terms of activities, wanting to hang out with friends, right? Those kinds of things. So we have heard anecdotally from districts struggles with that middle school grades. And this data reflects what we've heard.
One quick question. Thank you. Just when you're looking at attendance, what are the, I guess, limits or ranges? Is it anytime, one day, or is it like a whole camp attendee? Like not all attendees are equal. Like they came once and didn't come back versus perfect attendance. Like, what is your limits for capturing attendance data?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for asking that. The only control we put in place there was to remove students who attended less than 10% of the days. So for those students, we more or less assume they were never actually enrolled. They might have come the first day or two and then never come back.
So we remove number of days you can be at a summer camp.
It depends. So the camps, the learning loss bridge camps are 4 weeks. The summer learning camps by statute are 6. We have allowed districts to waive those to 4. So some districts do a 6 week, some do a 4. So it just depends. It's either 20 or 25 days, depending on, you know, whether the districts have waived that 6 week requirement.
Okay. Gotcha. So 10% of, so anything less than 10% of the 20 days.
That's correct. Those were the only students we removed from
Okay.
being considered, you know, in these attendance numbers. Which is for the 4-week camps, obviously about 2 days. So any student who attended more than 2 days, we counted in these attendance numbers.
And do you have how many students have attended 50% of the days or 75% of the days? Do y'all have that or?
I do, yeah. I don't have it off the top of my head, but
That's
we do
fine.
have that data. Nate, I'd be happy to follow up.
I'd just be curious
and
if
get
there's
that to you
like,
guys. Yeah,
listening
kind of what the
to,
bands are of who
right.
attended,
And,
how
I
much.
think,
Yep.
listening to Elizabethton's cities, they had a decline in numbers last year and that's travel, like, hey, we can go do stuff, right? There's that part of it. Just,
Yep.
I think as we try to sustain this, we'd just be curious to see what data sets that we might be able to see something or extrapolate something from or correlate something to if, so I'd just be curious.
Yeah, I think we could probably do like a 0 to 25%, 25 to 50%,
Yeah,
et
that'd be
cetera, and just kind of
fascinating.
break that down for you.
And by like great, again, like, middle school, you saw the dip. Those
Yep.
kids get a little more say probably, or maybe throw a
Yep.
bigger fit if they don't want to go in the summer. But like, just where does that all fall out?
Yep, absolutely. Not a problem. We can get
Thank
that
you.
over
Thank
to
you.
you.
Sorry to interrupt. Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions or comments on that before we go over to the pre and post? Okay. So in terms of student growth on our pre and post test, I want to just explain a little bit about the tests before we get into the data. And as is noted in kind of that first bullet here, we took a different approach to the pre and post test this year as compared to summer of 2021. We heard feedback from districts after that first summer that, the summer camp time period is so short. They wanted us to try to reduce testing time to save more time for instruction. So in the summer of 22, this past summer, we made some adjustments to be able to do that, as well as to ensure that testing could be done through our existing state platforms with scores reported directly back to the department automatically. Versus in the first summer, we had situations where districts were having to record scores for individual students by hand in an Excel sheet, submit those back to us. So we were able to create a much more automated system for districts in summer of 2022. So for students in grades K2, these are your rising, so students heading into first, second, or third grade. We used the universal screener as their assessment. This assessed a select set of probes for each grade level. And we used the grade level that they were in for the prior school year. So it assessed them on a select set of probes for the grade level that they were just finishing as the summer assessment. And I will name here that Lisa and Clay, who are on the call, can jump in if I miss anything because they are a bit more intimately familiar with these assessments. So that was for our lower grades. For students in grades 3, this should actually say 7 on the slide. Students in grades 3 through 7, otherwise known as students rising into 4th through 8th grade. Those tests were administered using our existing SchoolNet secure tester application for both ELA and math. So in these grades, we actually used the student's spring TCAP from the prior spring as the pre-test. This allowed us to reduce time in testing and actually eliminated the need to re-administer a test at the beginning of camp because we just used their spring TCAP results that they had just taken as the pre-test. Their post-test then for math really focused on 3 to 4 domains of standards as the focus for that assessment, and those were transparently communicated to districts. And in ELA, the post-tests were passage-based and used items that were developed in the same manner as the TCAP summative assessment. So kind of a mirror version of those TCAP summative assessments. The one exception here I want to note is 3rd grade. So those rising into 4th grade. We did something a little bit different with this grade, and we administered an actual pre-test and post-test Rather than using their TCAP, we used a pretest and post-test that were both a bit longer than what other grades experienced because it covered the full scope of standards. The purpose of this was to gather information and kind of pilot data to evaluate and finalize our plans for determining adequate growth and offering that grade 3 ELA retake opportunity this coming summer that we need to do in alignment with the requirements for third grade promotion. So our students finishing third grade, hanging into fourth, had a slightly longer pre and post test experience with the full scope of standards, again, to allow us to kind of pilot some things as we head into implementation of the new third grade promotion requirements. I'll pause there just on test structure to see if there are questions or clarifications before we move into some of the data. Okay, not hearing any at the moment. We will head to the next slide and look at some of the data that we saw in outcomes. So here you can see growth represented in both ELA and math, and then broken down within each kind of box there by our elementary and middle grades. You'll note, as I said, that we did see growth in both ELA and math, with slightly more progress in math than ELA. You'll also see that we've noted here that with one exception, there was really no discernible difference in growth performance between ED and non-ED students. So those students progressed at relatively the same pace, showed the same amount of growth from their pre to post test. The only place where we did see ED students, our economically disadvantaged students, lag slightly behind their non-ED peers was in the bridge camp, so our middle grades ELA. I also would add here that if you were to pull up our summer 2021 report that is also on our website, you'd see that the growth levels reported in summer 2021 were a bit higher than 2022. But what I want to emphasize here is that one really cannot draw comparisons between these two measures because the tests were different, both in scope, the content that was assessed, the type of assessment, and the test security related to the assessment. So I talked about some of the additional measures we put into place this summer. The differences in those tests really make it impossible to compare growth in summer 21 to summer 22. It's just completely different measures. So I did want to note that. And then I think the last point I'll make here is that while I did note that we took steps to address some of the district feedback between summer 21 and 22, particularly around reducing testing time, I would be remiss to not note that districts still reported challenges with test administration related to things like platform accessibility and usability. So I'll just note that these are areas we are attending to and certainly working towards solutions for as we head into this coming summer. And in summer of 2023, I think hope to be in a place of having a more stable assessment pre and post where that is more consistent from year to year. We've had some experimentation and piloting in these first couple of years, and I think are moving towards a good solution that I know we will be bringing to you all, I believe, in February to talk more about. I'll pause there and see if Lisa or Clay want to add anything or if there are any questions.
Megan, I think you did a really good job talking about the variance between first summer and second summer. I think there's also a lot of variance between what districts had to lift and do during first summer to design a program that had not existed. We had summer school, but this was actually extended learning of what we actually do during the school year. So I think as districts are getting better at summer programming, and you heard a little bit about this at Elizabethton, I think our data becomes more accurate measures of what we're trying to accomplish as we're trying to create a data system that accurately measures what we're trying to accomplish. So we were in a strong learning space in 21, and I think we got better in 22, but I think based on those first 2 years, I think Megan, you represented that well, that we are in a really good space and a really strong space moving forward in 23, where summer becomes an extension of learning, not just a recovery effort. So I think that was a really good point that you made, Megan.
Megan, you touched on one of my two questions about how we compared to last year. And this, I may be going down the wrong road on this one, but is there, do we have any goal about how much we wanted them to improve or anything like that, of what we needed to hit?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, we intentionally did not. I think these first 2 summers, especially as we work to get the assessment right, we do have to define as we move into next summer what adequate growth is, particularly for those students finishing 3rd grade and heading into 4th grade. So we will be bringing that to you all actually to help us define what we believe adequate growth is, but we did not actually set any specific targets in these first 2 years.
I think it's great that there's not discernible difference between economically and non-economically disadvantaged students in the summer programs. Um, is that translating into school, or is that unique to the summertime? Like, that's such a great thing that you're seeing this historical place of gap not occurring. Do we see or have any evidence of that transitioning into the school year?
I'm gonna phone a friend and see if Lisa or Clay recall from our latest TCAP results how ED and non-ED compared, because I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
I don't know off the top of my head, but I have a deck. I presented it to you last time, so I'll pull it and I'll drop it in the chat for you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I just couldn't remember. I just think it's great that we're not seeing where there's been historical gaps, and love to see that, carry on, carry on.
Yep, absolutely. I agree. Okay, we will keep moving, but certainly can come back to any of this as things come up. Lisa, were you going to jump in? It looked like you might have
Yeah,
found.
I think one thing that's unique here that we hear reported, both in those observational pieces that Megan talked about her team doing and in our site visits, is that when you're in summer programming, you're working with 12 students max, and the ability to target that just-in-time feedback and keep everybody on track is
Yeah.
a special place that we are seeing in that data that you mentioned. Where we hear in those larger class sizes during the year, you're not able to do that. One of the great hallmarks of Tennessee All-Core is that replication during the school year. So I think it would be a nice wondering for us to track down, is it some of that smaller group opportunities that they get during the summer? I do know that we had some differences in the ED sections, and I'm going to drop that in the chat, but that was just my wondering, the follow-up, Megan, then I'm going to let you keep going.
Yeah, that's great.
That's,
Thank you.
that's great, Lisa. Thank you.
Okay, so the last section that we reported on was staffing. The law requires us to report the extent to which summer camps were, quote, adequately staffed. This term isn't defined in the law, so we've had to kind of define that for districts and collect this data from them, because it is not, while we have rosters of teachers in summer school, we don't have any insight into the extent to which those rosters provided to us were adequate to meet the needs of summer school. So what we've done to collect this data for the last 2 years is send out a survey to districts asking us to report whether they were able to adequately staff camps. And we've defined that as pretty simply, like, could you accept all of the students who wanted to enroll? To us, we felt like staffing was adequate if you were able to take all of the students who want to participate in summer camps, and you don't have to turn students away because you don't have the staffing resources to serve them. So we've taken a pretty simple definition of this for the purposes of this report. In this definition, though, I want to note we do not assess the type of staff that districts had. As you can see in the slide, they have flexibility in that second bullet describes that they have flexibility in the law to first prioritize staffing who are, licensed endorsed teachers. But if that doesn't cover the full need of their camps, they can staff with anyone with a college degree who has completed an online course that you heard Elizabeth mention that we've created and provided to districts. So we have not, in our survey of districts, captured or really dug into the nature of their staffing, who is licensed versus not. So as you can see in their data that they reported via this survey, the vast majority of districts, save for a handful, were able to adequately staff their camps based on that definition of, being able to serve all of the students who wanted to participate. They are utilizing licensed teachers and or other staff, as we mentioned, or other individuals. I anecdotally heard superintendents say that they had roped their spouses into teaching summer school. We heard some utilizing retired teachers as well. So lots of different options that districts are pursuing to make sure that they can meet the need. They also have teachers maybe who teach for 2 of the 4 weeks and then trade off, and another teacher who teaches the second 2 weeks to allow them the time that they need to have a summer break and rest and recoup. So a lot of different staffing models, as I said, that we haven't captured a ton of data on just yet. But you can see here that districts, through those creative staffing solutions, were able to staff their camps to meet their need. We asked for just a drop-down menu in our survey of reasons if you were not able to staff, and you can see there's fairly even spread here across some of the reasons that we listed. In some cases, it wasn't actually getting enough teachers. That was the problem, but having enough site support staff or having enough bus drivers to run all the routes. So it wasn't necessarily just the classroom teachers. In some cases, that made staffing challenging for those few districts who were not able to meet the need. This slide just shows again for this it's a very small number of districts. We were talking, I think, 4 to 5 who struggled to meet the needs of their camps and had to turn away students. But for those, for their summer camps, again, those are the elementary grades. This shows what grade levels were most impacted, where they had challenges staffing with classroom teachers. It's pretty evenly split. There's not a lot of earth-shattering data here, but pretty evenly split across grade levels and subject areas, which likely just means that there was maybe 1 or more school sites that district would have offered camps at, but couldn't because of staffing.
Mm.
This is the same data, again, just for the middle school camps, the Learning Loss Bridge camps. And we see similar trends here, no discernible differences between grades and subjects. And again, if I had to guess, likely reflective of just maybe an additional school site they might have offered, but didn't. And then just to close out here, generally speaking, I think as you heard from our exemplar district today, we continue to hear positive feedback from districts about the summer camp experience and the ability to offer these camps thanks to funding from the General Assembly. And I think a couple of things we're seeing in districts really focusing on continuous improvement each summer with their camps. This year, for example, districts reported to us kind of anecdotally that planning was much smoother already, as Lisa noted earlier, just having 1 year under their belt, planning for those camps, getting them up and running. A lot of improvement efforts from districts as they go year to year here. Many began providing opportunities this summer in particular, now that they had a year under their belt, for their summer school teachers to plan and prepare together for instruction before camp started, which several noted was kind of a lesson learned from year 1. And I think we saw more districts really thinking strategically about staffing and sites. We saw more districts consolidating sites, realizing that they could better serve students and staff in a more concentrated scope of places, and more strategically utilizing the funds that they were provided for camps. As I said, we are working on finalizing pre and post test plans for this summer, and we are working on getting funding allocations for this summer as well out to districts. So those are kind of the next 2 big things on the horizon for summer of 2023. Both of these reports I've linked in this slide deck are available on our website from last year and this year. And with that, I will be happy to take additional questions or comments, or let you all keep moving in your agenda. I know you've got a lot to cover today.
All right, see none. we're going to keep going on. I think we're a few minutes behind, but just all good stuff. So I'm going to turn it over to Tennessee Reading Research Center, looking at the 360 initiative. Thank you so much, Megan, for all of that, and really do appreciate it. It's fun to see the progress and the growth. And but I want to turn it over to a Reading 360 initiative, the Tennessee Reading Research Center. I can see Dr. Coons on my screen here, and Dr. Reed. I'm going to turn it over to you guys now.
Yep, really excited to talk about how we are looking at this work. You've heard Elizabethton talk about their Reading 360 work, some of their summer programming and their Tennessee All-Core work. And we've got some really strong bright spots across the state, whether it's the Reading 360 training, whether it's other things. But the design of the Reading Research Center is really to get at the data and the quantitative analysis to see what is working. I remember presenting to you one of my very first presentations back at the department, and you said, how do we know what's working? How do we know that this is actually going to be scalable and change opportunities for students? Right. So one of the things that I'm most excited about, and I talked a little bit about this last time I got to talk with everyone, is the Reading Research Center is really taking this data and really looking at the pieces of the data and helping us understand what's making great impact, what components of that work that Elizabethton is doing that is so important to changing the outcomes that you saw in their district. So we're going to flip through a couple of slides because I know we are going to be somewhat efficient. You heard Megan talk about our strategic plan, and I really want to lean in that we are doing all of this work. You all are all meeting here because, nope, Allie, you were on the right one before. That was the right slide. Reading proficiency truly matters. And what we know that is if a child is literate and can pass that TCAP, not only read on grade level, but apply those reading skills to that grade level content, they are 4 times more likely not to drop out of high school, and they are much more likely to meet their socioeconomic, health, wellness, and high school completion goals that they make. They're more likely to graduate from high school. They're more likely to engage and be successful in those post-secondary programs. So it's so important for us to deeply understand this literacy work at the beginning. And that is part of what the reading research is trying to deeply understand, is what is making that greatest impact so that we know our children are on track to meet their lifelong goals.
Great.
So what is the Reading Research Center? What is this component that we are investing in? The Reading Research Center was established to evaluate and independently analyze. So they are not part of the Department of Education. They sit at UT of Knoxville and understand how our investment and our optional literacy supports and grants improve student literacy rates. They are really looking at those district and ed prep grants and really looking at the work that's happening within those grants, that use of Sounds First instruction in pre-K 3 classrooms, that increase of high quality materials, that prep for our future educators in literacy instruction, and then also all of those components in the Literacy Success Act that we've been talking about for a long time. The universal reading screening data, the foundational literacy skills plans, the networks, and all of those pieces. How do those all work together? And what are the particular levers that actually show increases in that universal reading screening data and in that TCAP data that we're trying to accomplish? So I'm just going to give you a reminder that Reading 360 and some of the things we're going to be looking at are those training and coaching, those networks, those grants, the EPP and leader prep innovation work, some of the regional supports that we're doing, that assessment, and then those resources, those intangible resources that we are supporting families with through this work that comprehensively looks at Reading 360. And we are shifting from the launch phase of the Tennessee Reading Research Center that was established at UT. They have been working hard on hiring the executive director, and I'm going to turn it over to the fabulous Dr. Reed in just a second. And then really, Dr. Reed has been doing a lot of touring and working on meeting core regional supervisors and understanding the context in Tennessee. So that is the launch phase of the Tennessee Reading Research Center. And then we're going to shift into what we are moving into right now as part of the Reading Research Center on the next slide. So March through June, that is where we started that strong staffing plan, how we were going to deliver data, what data they were going to look at, what that plan looked like. And really from July till October, We've been cleaning up. We talked a lot in past board meetings about that universal reading screening data, getting that data clean, getting it in a way that the Reading Research Center can use, translating that to who took those Reading 360 trainings, how do we translate that, what are we seeing in classrooms. Myra mentioned earlier this magical thing called an IPG, which is our walkthrough tool that we're using across the state. What does it look like when a teacher is trained? What does it look like when we walk into their classroom? How does that impact students? And then how does that impact outcomes? So putting all of those data pieces together that we're collecting to create that plan and making sure it's a consistent data that we can transfer data securely since it has student connected information to it, and making sure that we are all clear on what we're trying to accomplish. Now, Deborah has launched into the deep Reading 360 work. So I'm going to turn it over to Deborah now to kind of dig in and talk about what they are doing at the Reading Research Center. So I'm excited to introduce Dr. Deborah Reed, our Executive Director for the Reading Research Center. She is on faculty at the University of Tennessee, and I'm not sure where she is because I can't see her, but I'm hoping that you can see her so that she can talk about the Reading Research Center.
Thank you, Dr. Coons. I'm happy to be here, and hopefully people can see and hear me both. So
There you go. Thank you. Glad to have you with us today.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for making some time. So after some negotiation between the two big bureaucracies, we've settled in our interagency agreement on these three focus areas. The Reading 360 is a suite of initiatives, of course, and so we're honing in on these three really meaty pieces of Reading 360. So as Dr. Coons mentioned, the early reading training and the networks involved in that, what happens in classrooms with teacher pedagogy and instruction, including the high quality instructional materials, and then what happens at our universities, including UTK, but all of the ed prep programs in the state, in terms of getting some consistency in how future educators are taught about reading development and prepared for delivering reading instruction. So if we could go to the next slide, then we have specific evaluation studies that are currently underway related to these three overarching aims. And the first is looking at the relationship between educator involvement in the professional development opportunities provided through Reading 360 and the relationship of that to their students' literacy outcomes. So in K2, we're looking at outcomes related to the Universal Reading Screener. And in grades 3-5, we're looking at outcomes related to TCAP performance. So we just want to see if there is a difference in teachers' level of involvement in these professional development opportunities and students' performance on these tests. And that is focusing on last year, which is the first year that the professional development was implemented. So really it's a pretty high charge for outcomes to be done in the first year of the rollout of all of the professional development. So we'll be releasing a series of reports related to that, some that are just descriptive and others that dig deep into those outcomes. Related to the second aim, we are looking at patterns in the adoption of high quality instructional materials. And by patterns, we mean, is there something about the region that a school district is in that tended to gravitate towards one particular high quality instructional material set versus another? Is there something about their student demographics? Is there something about the size of the district? So we're looking for any sorts of patterns in how school districts went about adopting their high quality instructional materials. And there may be none, but we're just going to look and see if there's any sort of pattern in that. And then hopefully we'll be able to connect the adoption of high quality instructional materials to students within year growth on reading, on the Universal Reading Screener in K3 specifically. And that concerns this current school year. So data collection, of course, is ongoing. There's only one round of the Universal Reading Screener that's complete right now, and there are 2 more to go. So this is work that's going to take a little bit longer before we can generate reports. And then finally, for our third aim on educator preparation programs, we're going to be looking at the different models that teacher prep programs at universities across the state have implemented in rolling out those innovation modules that the state funded. So I can tell you at our university, we made a specific plan for which modules would go in which courses and what sequence and who would teach them. And I'm sure that those kinds of decisions are being made at other universities as well. And we'd just like to take a look at what those are. And can we learn anything about the different models that these educator preparation programs are taking and rolling out those innovation modules? And then we'll ask about additional supports that might help improve the ability that they have to use the modules within their courses or to provide necessary supports for their students. So those are our three big projects that we have. And then I would not have moved here to Tennessee, and I don't think that the state would have made such a large investment in getting this center off the ground if we thought we would just close up shop September 30th of 2024 and say, wasn't that great? Goodbye, everyone. So we're trying to do some long-term planning to see how this center can really serve the best interest of the state in the long term and advance the literacy goals that the state has for all students achieving proficiency and all educator preparation programs turning out really effective teachers. So that's part of why we're trying to make connections with the various stakeholders and school districts around the state of Tennessee, is to see where can we provide the necessary supports and where might there be good opportunities for us to collaborate and think about our future plans for addressing their problems of practice. So I think that is where I end and would be happy to take some questions if you have any.
Any other questions? I have one or two, but I want to give everybody else a chance to ask first. What would you say, and given your research and what you're doing, that you're seeing sort of two things, like the if you were just to consolidate, okay, most gains are happening with this, and then here's what we still need. Like, what is it that you still need? What information? Where do you still need to gather more to be able to have a more complete picture?
Well, we are at the initial stages of digging into the data, so I'll be able to tell you a lot more about that as we get further along. But from the discussions that I've had across the state, people are really looking at the ongoing continuum of supporting students. So I think that there is a lot of strength right now that's happening in K-3, and the secondary modules have just rolled out in this past year. So the state is looking at how do we keep this going? We don't just want to drop off all supports for students after third grade. How do we continuously provide supports and strengthen the teaching force as well?
Gotcha. Okay,
anything to add to that?
Any other questions? I hear none. All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Reed. Okay, so now we're moving on. Oh, look at that. We're back on time. Tennessee All Corps. All right, Dr. Koontz, kick us off here. We have a couple other people. We have Missy Abel, and Amanda Waits on here as well. So just would love to turn this over to you and let you take us through our Tennessee All Corps spotlights.
Yep, very excited to have Dr. Reed just speak to the launch of the Reading Research Center, and I think it would be great for her to come in the spring and kind of share with you more of those questions you were asking about. What is the data starting to tell us? You know, as we're standing up a brand new center, it takes a little bit of time to put all those pieces together. So I would love for her to just give you guys an update and kind of let you know what she's starting to see in the spring. So don't let us forget that.
Yeah, I just say keep a standing invitation until she's tired of talking to us.
I think that's great.
Right? Like, just because, again, like, we have someone focused in on this, and I get excited about it, and I'm running 5 steps ahead, but I think it's just important for us to be able to, again, share best practice, share what's working, share what we want, and whatever we can do, I think, and for example, that you guys are doing that helps teachers just have to focus on the teaching and being able to tailor that, because we now see through the research, like here's what's working, here's what's not working so well, the better, I mean, the more we have of that, the better that is for everybody. So would love to keep her as a part of this, again, as much as she's willing to.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Also want to give a shout out to Elizabethton. They are part of this Tennessee All Course Spotlight, and they got to present their literacy work. So huge shout out to Elizabethton. We have a several districts supporting us in our thinking around Tennessee All Core. So I'm really excited to give you a little bit of a highlight of some of those fast innovators who have created really strong Tennessee All Core programs and give you a sense of what is actually happening with Tennessee All Core. I know that we have talked about, high dosage, low ratio tutoring. What is that? What does that look like? 2 or 3 times a week, 30 to 45 minutes in a group of 1 to 3. And those are nice theories of action from the department, but it's exciting to actually have districts who are in the practice, seeing results, and hear their models. So I'm excited to give you a little bit of a in-depth dive on Missy Abel and her work in Germantown, and Amanda Waits in Cobb County. We also have a little video from Lenore City Schools and Sean Walker in Lenore City Schools. He couldn't be with us today, but I wanted to give you a sense of Tennessee All Core in West Tennessee, in First Tennessee, in East Tennessee, and each of these districts really serve a different population of students and support students in unique and different ways within the context of the work. So we can move on past the strategic planning slide, because we've seen that a couple times today, and talk through the next slide, which gives you an overview of Tennessee All Core, which I'm briefly going to touch on just to remind us all of the work in Tennessee All Core. Tennessee All Core is what we call a continuum of student supports. As we think about our students and these various needs and how we ensure that they meet those outcomes, we talked a little bit about our economically disadvantaged students, and I dropped those differences in the chat that you see during the school year, which is that core instruction. So what do we do in other spaces to help close that gap, help that learning acceleration happen for students despite where they are? So Tennessee All Core is one of our key strategies for during the year to give students additional time. So high dosage, low ratio tutoring, and those are fancy words. High dosage means it's 2 to 3 times a week for 30 to 45 minutes. Low ratio means it's one tutor with 3 students, and it's that tight relationship and close relationship in that time, and it's just in time. So I'm getting classroom instruction and I'm immediately getting support. You heard Myra talk a little bit about their teacher and tutor collaboration time, and that's the beauty of Tennessee All Core, is the teachers and tutors are actually connected and able to provide that just-in-time support ongoing through the school year. That is one of the things we're most proud about Tennessee All Core, is it is that standards-based just-in-time support. We have had and continue to have RTI squared. It's not something that has gone away in this process, but RTI is that deeper skill gap. So if I'm really struggling understanding fluency, or I'm really struggling with my concepts in math and those kinds of things, RTI provides a much deeper gap level support in those fundamental skills. So Tennessee All Core is really about that just-in-time tutoring support, small groups on standards with a high dosage during the school year. RTI provides that deep gap skill closure that allows us to really dig in with students who have deeper struggles. And then you heard Megan and a lot of other people talk about our summer programs. That is that extended time. It is not a 1 to 3 ratio, but it's a 1 to 12 ratio for 4 weeks. And it's really that catch-up time. I didn't get this during the school year. I have a little bit more time, 4 weeks during the summer, to really dig in with those overarching concepts that I may not have captured or mastered during the school year. So we've really expanded this support level to students. We always have that core instruction. We always have that focus on what happens at best first instruction in the classroom. But now we've added a bench of supports that really tailors and targets to those students' needs. And you heard Myra talk a little bit about those different types, but I wanted to re-anchor us in all the things that can support students to accelerate that learning. So those reading literacy scores at the end of the year are not just what's happening in that classroom. They're also a testament to that all-core tutoring, that deep skill gap work that you're doing in RTI squared, and that extended time that might be needed in summer programming. And districts are working hard on all of those things to really accelerate learning for all of our students and really accelerate that outcome-based process and help us really dig in and support our students. So we're going to move to the next slide, which is Tennessee All-Core. We've talked around it a little bit, but we've invested $200 million as a state, both in district grants and community partner grants to serve 150,000 students. You're seeing the little snapshot from the 74, which has a headline and talks about our program nationally, but it is that 1-to-3 ratio, 2 to 3 times a week for 30 to 45 minutes. Students stay in the same content area with a consistent tutoring. Then we also have a high school program that provides math, ACT, and writing support, and we are getting an incredible amount of high school students anchoring in that high school tutoring that has started just after Halloween, and really excited about the number of students who are also getting high school support. So our high dosage support really digs in for those 1-8 grades, but we've added an additional virtual support for high school students. They can log on and get help with their math homework. They can get help with their prepping for a math test. They can focus on an ACT area, or they can drop in a paper, an essay for college applications, all that kind of thing. And we also have that high school tutoring that falls into Tennessee All-Core, and really excited to see that taking off this fall for students. So given all of those things, not just the tutoring, we expect to serve over 225,000 students in Tennessee through the suite of resources in Tennessee All-Core. The first part of our Tennessee All-Core grant was this district-focused support. And you're going to hear, you heard from Elizabethton, you're going to hear from Lenore City, you're going to hear from Germantown, you're going to hear from Cobb County about what they're doing to support students. But we had 27 districts launch last fall, had another 40 come online in January, and all 87 districts are working in Tennessee All-Core now in September. Additionally, we have 5 community partners, Literacy Mid-South in the Memphis area. We have a conglomerate of United Way partners in Middle Tennessee working on tutoring, United Way in Chattanooga, United Way in Knoxville, and then the Niswonger Foundation in First Tennessee, serving another 50,000, 25 to 50,000 students on top of those district supports and those community partnerships. So not only are our districts digging in Tennessee All-Core, and you heard Myra talk about Project On Track, that is that Niswonger part of Tennessee All-Core. You're seeing a huge number of community partners also come on board and support our districts, and really leveraging and expanding the seats available for students who are tutoring. So we had this wave 1 with districts that we're going to talk about because they've spent an entire year in this work. We've brought on the community partners and continue to work to establish partnerships to make sure that all of those children who need that continuum of learning have the opportunity to have a seat at the table to get those supports they need to be on track. So on our next slide, I think I get to turn it over to Cobb County, which is very exciting for me because I get to announce and introduce Dr. Amanda Waits. She is a phenomenal Chief Academic Officer in Cobb County, and she is just east, and I might mess this up, Amanda, you might have to help me, just east of our famous Gatlinburg area, and serves a lot of our rural students in that community, and excited for her to talk about Tennessee All-Core. I want to give her a shout out first. She serves on our advisory council. We meet twice monthly. She has presented in a variety of situations to other districts across the state. We have convenings. I think she's been on almost every convening presenting for us on some of the strategies they've used in Cobb County, and recently had an in-person convening that she presented at. So we're incredibly grateful to Amanda and the brilliance that she has designed in Cobb County and how she shared that with districts across the state. I'm going to turn it over to you, Dr. Waits.
Well, that's going to be hard to follow because you were quite flattering. So thank you. Oh, I want to I thank you all for being with us and listening to this. I do want to highlight Cocke County. I am proud of what the hard work that our folks have done. Cocke County is one of the 10 distressed districts in the state of Tennessee. So we have a very high population of those economically disadvantaged kids. In fact, we have one elementary school that if you use the 1.6 multiplier, they are over 100% free and reduced lunch at that school. So we have one of the highest in the region, in the First Tennessee region, maybe in the state. I'm not sure about that part, but we serve a very needy group of kids in Cocke County. And we are very proud that we have went above and beyond our expectations and how many students that we can serve in our tutoring platform that we have. So we are currently serving 669 of 2,466 students. Now that is not our entire student population. That is the population in grades 1 through 8 that is covered by the 10 All-Core grant. So we are currently serving 27% of our students with the 10 All-Core grant. So these students are getting tutoring before school, after school. That is 4 days a week because they don't want to stay on Friday. So why torture the kids and the teachers a little more? But that they enjoy it. We have had good attendance before and after school because of the relationships that the kids have built with those tutors, which are their classroom teachers. So in Cocke County, if a student stays for tutoring before school or after school, it is their current classroom teacher doing that tutoring. We also have tutoring that goes on during the school day. That is where the greatest number and percentage of our students are served. And it happens during the RTI block of time, which is a 45-minute time period carved out during the day for RTI, special education, and now we have layered in the 10 All-Core tutoring and some STEM and enrichment things that are going on. Our tutoring does happen 5 days a week. So instead of the minimum requirements of the 2 to 3 days a week, 30 to 45 minutes, our kids are getting it 5 days a week. It helps us with the consistency of schedules and just a kid knowing where they're supposed to go and when they're supposed to be there. We have a lot of people, community parents, in our local schools that come in, just the mom that wants to work a couple of hours and wants to help out. And they go through their training just like everyone else on here. We have college students that are in EPP programs that are future educators, and we have some that are not future educators that are just interested in coming back into the school and giving back at their alma mater, which we think is quite special. We have a few retired teachers, and we have some teachers that just want a part-time schedule. They've had a child, they don't want to teach full-time, they want to come in and work a few hours during the day and go home to their family. And we are greatly appreciative of those as well. They are very much givers. We have hired a Best for All coordinator. She assists me in helping facilitate and schedule the training. She is a data and spreadsheet guru for me that keeps up and tracks everything. We have weekly data documentation that our tutors fill out. They attend PLC meetings and data team meetings to help with that communication on how the student is progressing in tutoring and how they are doing in the classroom and specific areas that the teacher may see that they need that may not be apparent to the tutor during their sessions. We send home monthly letters stating their progress and reports from the different programs that we use. One additional success that I'd like to highlight in Cocke County before I pass it back to Dr. Coons is that we have the self-efficacy that these kids have through going through tutoring has been our greatest thing that we have seen. Our students from poverty come in with the mindset that they can't, no one in my family has, and that status quo is just okay with everyone. And our tutors are helping to break that cycle of poverty in that mindset with those kids. So we're seeing academic gains, but when the kids are excited, we hear stories of kids who they would never raise their hand in class to offer an answer, and now they're turning into that student that offers the answer in the regular classroom because they have gained that confidence that they need through the time that they have been in tutoring. And that to me is making the kid believe in themselves is just as important as the data and the numbers that we're going to see at the end of the year.
It's amazing.
Oh, I think you have a quote on the next slide too.
Oh,
Oh.
I do. Yes. Do you want me to read it? Or you all can. Yeah, students in tutoring are experiencing the academic gains as measured by our benchmarking and progress monitoring data. But what is immeasurable and equally important is the confidence and enthusiasm that students now exhibit towards subject areas that they previously did not achieve in academically. This is the catalyst that we have been missing for a majority of our students. And that's from Yvonne Student. She's my TN All-Core coordinator and person that helps me out with summer school and TN Core and all these wonderful initiatives that we have.
Well, thank you, Amanda. I really appreciate you giving us such a nice, coherent snapshot of what is happening in Cocke County, and really proud of the work. And you should be incredibly proud of the opportunities for kids. So I know you work tirelessly through the week for Cocke County and do a lot of stuff for us as well. So I am incredibly grateful for that. And I want to turn it over now to Missy Abel. Missy Abel is the Chief Academic Officer in Germantown Municipal School District, about on the opposite side of the planet, near Memphis, Tennessee, and serving a great deal of students as well, and some unique models, and doing really great work in that area of the state. Also been on multiple calls, submitted a wealth of resources for us to share with other districts about how they implemented Tennessee All-Core, what strategies they used, and how to use those strategies across the state. So really excited for Missy to come off of mute and for us to see her and see the brilliance that is occurring in Germantown. Thanks, Missy.
Woo.
Well, thank you for allowing me to share about this highly critical work around TN Core tutoring for Germantown Municipal School District. Just to give you some background about our district, we have 6 schools. We have 3 of those are K through 5. One of them is a K through 8 model, and one of them is a typical middle school, 6 through 8, and we have 1 high school, plus 1 virtual school. And so we serve grades pre-K 3 through 12, 6,033 students. And out of those, you can see our stats there that we are serving 477 students for TN All-Core. So that gives us 13.6% of our overall 1 through 8 student population. I even broke it down by elementary school just to discuss, because I thought it was interesting that for our elementary school, we had 13 to 15% of all of our students in grades 1, 2, 4, and 5 are receiving tutoring, but 24% for 3rd grade are receiving tutoring. So almost a fourth of our 3rd grade students, because those are the number. We give the 2nd grade TCAP assessment to our students each year. Those are the students who did not score proficient last spring. And of course, with the 3rd grade retention law, we wanted to really put that hyper focus on 3rd grade this year to see what sort of results we could get. So we put most of our eggs in the basket there for 3rd grade. And then we also expanded to middle school this year, and we serve 10% of our students primarily in math for grades 6 through 8, because when we looked at our data, that was our greatest area of need. And you know, Dr. Coons mentioned the high school program for paper online tutoring. We are in the process of rolling that out and have piloted that with a few of our students and have already received excellent feedback on that program. So we're excited about the additional part with the high school. Just to kind of explain our schedule, it's very similar to Dr. Waite's schedule at Cocke County. We wanted to prioritize it after we did the research on what is this high dosage, low ratio tutoring that we keep hearing about, like what makes it so different. Most of the research pointed out that it needs to be during the school day as much as possible to get the greatest effect. So we have 2/3 of all of our students who receive tutoring is during the school day, and 1/3 of ours get it outside of the school day. And we, like other districts like Cocke County, also have it built into our RTI intervention time. And so that's 45 minutes, but our students do go 2 days a week. I would love to expand that to 5 like y'all are doing in Cocke County. But right now they are receiving 2 days a week, 45 minutes to 50 minutes each time with their part-time tutor. And we hired the part-time tutors for the students not receiving tier 2 or tier 3 intervention services for RTI. However, we had our teachers, our principals identify the students early this year in August. And so they hadn't screened yet through the universal screener. And once some of those students who were identified for tutoring also flagged for tier 2 services, we thought, oh, well, how are we going to manage this with the tutoring also? But it was an easy fix because they can get their tier 2 services 3 days a week and tutoring services twice a week. So we know that with the transient nature of tier 2, a student necessarily doesn't stay in there the whole year for tier 2. We hope they come back out after they get their skills intervention. But with TNL core tutoring, they're in it for the year, at least for the first semester, unless they show adequate growth and can transfer out. But we have been excited to have that flexibility with our schedule, with the RTI time versus our TNL core time. Additionally, we hired 1 ELA tutor and 1 math tutor for each elementary school during the school day. And our middle school, like I said, needed math. So we just hired 1 math tutor for each one of those schools during the school day. And then we also have the extended day tutoring. But for our extended day tutoring, we wanted to stick to our staff. So we're just like Cott County's doing, we're using our staff because they know their students for outside of the school day. And we did participate in it last year. We were one of those 40 districts who started in January, which only gave us 4 months. But in those 4 months, we saw huge gains, which I will share just at the bottom of our slide here in a minute. So moving on to what our tutors are composed of. We have retired local educators. We have ELA certified teachers, and we also have non-certified staff that we trained more intensely than our certified staff. But I really want to kind of promote this whole retired local educator part because we trained our principals to get the buy-in on this program because we've had all different kinds of tutoring programs come through the years, right? So this one is so unique that we wanted our principals to have that specific training on it and to get the full buy-in, like, hey, this is a program that's going to make a huge difference because you're going to take those students who are almost proficient, focus on those, connect it with the classroom teacher. So we wanted them to have the say in who was hired. We did not do the hiring for them. We set them up to say, hey, go hire your 2 best and brightest in the area. And so some of our schools actually went out and recruited former teachers who have retired, or teachers like Amanda was saying, who just wanted to, maybe they don't want to work full time. So we thought that would make the most effect, and we have found that that is true. So that's the composite of our tutors and our support that we provide. We also have a TNL core coordinator. It is not her full-time job, but she has done an amazing job. She's actually an RTI coach, and she oversees this entire program for our district. Donna Jones, I give a shout out to her for our success. She has trained, like I said, we trained the principals. We brought in the instructional supervisors to work closely with the tutors for the training because this, we wanted it to align to what they're doing in the classroom. This tutoring would not have meant anything if it was not aligning to what went on in the classroom. So she took the time to set up the training. For example, we're fortunate enough that we use Eureka Math as our math curriculum, which aligns perfectly to Zern. And Zern is what the state has provided for us to use for TNL Core. It has been a perfect alignment. The tutors have all commented on that with the teachers. And those teachers, I have to say, were a little reluctant to turn over their babies to the tutors during that intervention time when they normally would have had their students. But once they saw that the tutors were intently aligning the materials, and they're able to because the number of students is so small. For example, like a 3rd grade ELA tutor during the day has 30 students total per week, 30 students on their caseload. So they are able to easily find that teacher within the building because they're not tutoring during kindergarten time and they're not tutoring during MAPS time. So we have found intentional ways to partner them with the teacher, and the teachers are now excited about it. Like they're like, I can't wait for you to go to your tutor and get this, because I'll add on to what the successes have been, just like Amanda was sharing. It's more than just quantitative, the qualitative effect of how confident these students now are. I've watched a student who had their head down during class. And the tutor, they're totally different with the tutor in the beginning, let's say August, they were coming out of their shell, developing that confidence, developing the love for reading, and developing the love to kind of like back and forth with, well, I don't understand. Why is it like that in math? Just that confidence building, going back into the classroom and having that carry over now because they realize I do actually know something and I do want to contribute in the class without feeling like they're a failure. So that's been probably one of the biggest successes that you can't put a measure on, that is critical. I talked about like our ELA alignment to the classroom. I've noticed that some districts have struggled, like Elizabethton mentioned, some struggled with finding ELA materials. We've kind of had some similar struggles, but we did train our tutors on the Fountas and Pinnell Level Literacy Intervention System, LLI kits, which we found helped to align to what they were doing in the classroom, because we already had Sax and phonics going on in there, and as well as wit and wisdom curriculum. And so this was a nice supplement to that, to also align to what they're doing in the classroom. I'll move on. I'm probably going over my time, but I'll mention our family reporting. Yes, we do written reports. It's like I said, our numbers are small, so it's easy for our tutors to reach out to the parents. They have regular communication with them. I will say it's been more of a struggle with our extended day families to get initially to get the buy-in from the parents, because some of the parents would say, well, my student has an A or B in the class. Why are you saying they need tutoring? Well, because our data indicates they're not proficient, which also helped with our rollout of target-based grading. So we realized, okay, sometimes the grades don't align with the progress on assessments, and the assessments are what truly tell us what the students know and can do. Our qualitative successes, our quantitative, I will say, probably the biggest one is that last bullet down there. 45% of students in our TNL core program made more than 1 year's growth on reading levels, and that was in 4 months last year. So we know that it's effective. I will stop with that point and say, let's go to my quote on the next slide, because it kind of summarizes everything for us. So this is from Donna Jones, our TNL core coordinator. Students who have struggled and expressed feelings of defeat in the classroom have grown through this highly focused tutoring program. They've also demonstrated higher levels of confidence and have taken more ownership in their learning. Additionally, the partnership of our part-time tutors with our teachers sets students up for greater success to access instruction in the classroom. Given the positive impact on students and their learning, this tutoring structure is vital. So thank you for taking the time to listen.
Thank you so much. I want to have a whole nother conversation on target-based grading, but we don't have time. It's fascinating. So thank you very much for that.
I'm really excited to have both of those chief academic officers share their hard work in different parts of the state and all of that incredible work. Also want to just highlight Lenoir City. Sean has been a great thought partner on that advisory council that Dr. Abel and Dr. Waits also serve on, and helping us support. One of the unique things about Lenoir City, and really thrilled to have Dr. Walker share in his video, is their focus on our English learner population. Lenoir City has one of the highest percentage English learner population, and has done tremendous focus work in helping that student group as well. So Allie and I both have our fingers crossed that we're going to get to hear from Sean Walker and his video about Lenoir City. So Allie, let's try. Well, Allie, I don't know if we're going to get to hear from Sean, but we can definitely shoot this video out to you so that you can hear from him when you have a minute, and we'll make sure you have this video and then it's attached to the notes, because it's really exciting to hear what Sean is doing and what the team is doing. They serve 145 students. They have focused their message during the school day, and they also use primarily retired local teachers. They had a lot of community volunteers last year, and they found that those retired local teachers have a little bit more content knowledge and are able to support students just in time in the classroom, and have shifted most of their tutoring support to retired local tutors. They actually went out to hire a retired superintendent who goes out to a variety of meetings and spaces to recruit tutors, and has a waiting list of tutors in Lenoir City. So we're really excited to have a district with a waiting list of staffing to help students. They also use a home letter and district communication system, and they use the Tennessee All-Corps to change their master schedule and really have uniquely designed a time where all second grade students leave the classroom and walk to what they need. So I might need language support, I might need RTI, I might need tutoring, I might need enrichment. And so they do this model where during the day, second grade gets everything they need at a certain time during the day and use an all hands on deck kind of staffing support. So it's really neat. I encourage you to listen to Sean's video to share what Lenore City is doing. Excited that you got to see 4 of our Rockstar districts today, whether it was Elizabethton talking about literacy and some of their other continuum student supports, Cott County and Dr. Waite's work in East Tennessee, or Dr. Abel's work in Germantown. Really just proud of our districts who have taken the initiative not only to build really strong designs for their districts, but have taken an enormous amount of time to share their work, share their successes with other districts, and build a network to help all of our districts build strong Tennessee All-Corps. Just really incredibly proud and humbled that get to share these amazing women with you today and the work they're doing in their districts. So I am finished talking about Tennessee All-Corps and the work, but I'm going to turn it back over to you, Nate, and excited to end on time.
Well, and I just want to say, as we're heading up here on 2 o'clock, the most encouraging thing about this is just what you said, Dr. Coombs, was 4 different schools doing great work in different parts of the state. And sometimes we can listen to, I think, all of the worst cases and, some of the statistics that can be more discouraging, especially post-pandemic, and then to hear what you guys are doing from Elizabethton to Lenore City to Germantown. I mean, it's just, it's unbelievable, really. And I just want to say thank you. This is so helpful as we move forward, and to be able to tie the existing work with what we're doing in schools in real time with a lot of the research that's going to be coming out of the Tennessee Reading Research Center is going to be exciting to see how those things can overlap. And so I just want to thank everybody who participated today. And if there's anything for final comments from our other board members or committee members, want to go ahead and give space for that.
Keep up the great work. Thank you all.
Yeah, same. Thanks for all the time and all the work that you're doing. Really impressed with how you're getting those tutors in a time where we're all struggling to get employees. I know it can't be easy, and you've taken a little bit from every bucket, and it's pretty impressive, and it's great that it's working.
Yeah, the resiliency and innovation and willingness to come together by all of these districts is just awesome to see. Okay, well, thank you on behalf of everyone on the call. I now will declare this officially adjourned since it is 2 p.m. Thank you all.
Thank you.